Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to the Elets interactive series of BFSI segment. We got very special guest today, Mr. Souparno Bagchi. It's always conventional or cliche to introduce somebody as host to one who needs no introduction, but that's truly hold the case for my guest today. Before I introduce him, let me say a brief bio about him. He's currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer at True Balance, a company changing the financial landscape of the country and giving true meaning to financial inclusion of the country. In his 2 decades of eventful professional journey, he has held various leadership positions across coveted and global giants like Goldman Sachs, TCS, Deloitte, and he has straddled many global cross-functional impact roles in BFSI segments, covering the domain of wealth management, alternate finance, trades and payment settlements, financial compliances. His marquee experience include building businesses, startups, advising CXOs, advising clients on strategies, ventures, leading a year-long transformational business programs. He's a technologist himself. He has got hands-on experience on designing and developing various enterprise applications, innovative solutions. And as a thought leader, he has been to various conferences and summits related to the industry across India and worldwide. So I'm delighted to welcome my guest, Mr. Souparno Bagchi, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, starting off, sir, could you please share more about your professional journey and the key milestone you have achieved before being joined as Chief Operating Officer at Balancehero?
So, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have the conversation. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. Now, when you ask and when I kind of look back on the mirror, it's been more than 20 odd years. 20 odd years, quite a bit of work in various functions, if I may say. I think there are 2 things which I'd love to share. One is the change in the diversity in terms of the functions, in terms of the role, and the other is the commonality. Yeah. So it is a bit of a dichotomy, you can say. But one part is like the constant part, which is like my involvement and my work in the financial services space. So the domain has been the common sutradhar. But otherwise, started my career as a hardcore engineer. The fun of build, the joy of like building systems, working in some ways mission critical systems when it comes to the financial services space. Market infrastructure systems like your depositories and settlements, orgs. Worked for quite a while in the sell side businesses, primarily in the wealth space, building the joy of building products. And back then, I'm talking about like maybe 16, 17 years back. Back then, again, it was a different cyclicity in terms of wealth tech products, especially in the North American market. So that was quite a fascinating journey, both in the tech and the product space. Then moved on to the business side of things. Was fortunate enough to explore some of the other geographies, including the Eastern Hemisphere, and even exploring India as a country and the India as a market. So that's been fascinating. And obviously, after like quite a few years, 20 odd years in the enterprise, did the switch over into the startup phase. Somewhere, I think the excitement had already kicked in, having interfaced and worked with some of the startups, having worked on some of the investments around it. So that's where, and now it's been some time now in this startup space. Yes, that's a different kind of a high. That's a different kind of an excitement. Day in, day out, you kind of get a sense of what you bring onto the table, what the team brings onto the table, the hustle, the excitement, and more importantly, like your the high of the purpose gets to a different level. So the purpose somewhere gives you the drive, and then when you see the impact coming across, so that's a different level of satisfaction. So yeah, that's the way I'll put it. In a nutshell, that's kind of the journey has been.
Thank you for spilling the beans about your professional journey, sir. Sure. It was quite interesting and impressive to hear that as well. So you shared you love designing product and developing innovative solutions, being engineers. That's a niche of engineers. So against the backdrop of rising cyber threats, how do you see the emerging role of emerging technology in developing products that is cyber resilient and that is cyberproof. And how does true Balancehero incorporate these trends into making product that is cyber resilient and customer friendly?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, thank you for asking this, because it's quite a pertinent as a question. Because what has happened is, again, when I see like the more than 2 decades of the journey in the tech space, there was a time when systems were primarily closed systems, right? I started off working from the mainframe world, right? So that was a very different scenario and an ecosystem where application systems were built on. Fast forward, now we are at the stage where we are at the cyber age. Now, what that means exactly what you mentioned, right? There is always a threat and a vulnerability. I think the way it is like, it starts with accepting the threat.
Yes.
I think at the core is giving the due importance and the due acceptance that, hey, there is a constant battle which you have to fight constantly. At times it's more like a guerrilla warfare, right?
Yeah.
It's not like one-time war which you can win and feel good about. It's like
You have to be constantly on.
Yeah, it has to be constantly on. It has to be a very integral part of what you build and how you protect.
Yes.
Right. At times we consider that a cyber threat is more in terms of a defense mechanism. I don't think so. I mean, it has to be something integral in terms of how you build your system, how you build your philosophy, how you set the tone at the top in terms of the engineering systems, in terms of the users, in terms of the compliance requirements as well. So everything put together, I think it is a lot more proactive in essence rather than just thinking as a defense mechanism. Because when you talk about cyber threat and when you orient around like, okay, what it means, people typically think like, oh, how I am defending. But the way I look at it is like, it's not just a defense mechanism, it's more something which is integral to it. So that means you build systems, you operate in a way that, you're always ready in terms of closing the doors and the threats around it. So that's more in terms of the philosophy and the approach. What follows thereafter is the mechanics. Very interestingly, the lock and the key both are powered by technology, right? And now, since it's a constant battle, right? At times it's like a catch me kind of a game, right? Who is ahead of the game? Who is ahead of the challenge here is when you are running a business, if you don't consider your cyber protection as a part of the integral part of the business, and you think like, hey, business is primary and this is secondary, once that kind of a pecking order sets in, then you are already losing the battle. Because you need to appreciate on the other side, the attackers are working 24/7. So that means your protection mechanism also have to work 24/7. You have to be ahead in the game. So from that aspect, it's very, very important that anything which is on the lines of protection of information security, data, cyber threat, anything of that nature has to be appreciated in equal weightage and parlance of doing business. Yeah. It has to be considered as part of doing business. It cannot be like, hey, okay, there is a core business and this is on the periphery. Many a times, I think businesses falter in that kind of a mindset. So again, the mindset is important. Once that is taken care of, having the right kind of people, having the right kind of tools, and having the right kind of alliances and collaborations. Because we also need to appreciate one thing, that you need to have a very strong in-house mechanism in terms of people and mechanics. But at the same time, this is so fast and constantly evolving. Somewhere or the other, collaboration with the right kind of partners who can help you in terms of raising your walls on cyber threat is equally important. On a net basis, I'd also like to call out the business and the nature of business also has a key role to play. Now, coming to your questions around the part of True Balance and Balancehero. We are in the business of financial services. That means what we deal with is money. At the core, what we deliver is money. At the core, what we transact is money. So that itself takes the scale of importance in terms of protection to a different degree. Secondly, what happens is also like what kind of financial services, right? We are in the business of lending and we are in the business of payments as well. Again, considering the sensitivity of the business and considering some of the things, even what the regulators and the ecosystem expect, we are able to put ourselves at a higher threshold, right? So when it comes to cyber threat, when it comes to data protection and security around it, being the custodian of the data and being responsible for the customer, since we also run the payments business, that helps us to always stay ahead of the game and put a very, very high threshold and high standards in terms of how we are able to make sure that the data, the information, and the customer interest is protected and safeguarded from the aspect of any cyber threat or otherwise. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, it's a constant warfare. It's not a one-time game, and at times it's like a guerrilla warfare. So you have to be constantly in this game.
You're true, sir. It's a constant warfare, and cyber protection should not be the defense mechanism. It should be integral to any products, new products being developed, or any new innovative solutions being operated in the finances domain. As a CEO of True Balancer, what is your vision to make finance accessible to the unserved people of India? And what is your goal to make finance accessible to the billions of people in India who are unserved and uncredited?
So that's what our purpose is, right? So a True Balance is like our motto is like finance for all. What that means is like we being able to extend and make financial services accessible to all, the way we call out the next billion people. Now, if you translate that and if you kind of double click around it, what that means, it means like any sort of financial services where it might not be easily serviceable to, let's say, a people in a tier 1 or a certain street and segment, how we kind of democratize that and push the horizon of serviceability. See, when we talk about India, right, everyone talks about like business, large country, huge addressable market. But the key here is to understand that by virtue of fintech, by virtue of financial services and technology combined together, are we able to push the horizon of serviceability? It's not about like, hey, India is a 1 billion plus country, but it's more about, hey, are you in a position to, with the help of technology, to be able to extend the service, make it a viable business, so that it's not just you, but the ecosystem also come together to help and support you to do that serviceability. So the key is pushing the horizon of serviceability. Now, how do you go about doing that? And that's where technology come into play in two matters. As a consumer, it's about the convenience and affordability, which means technology making it easily accessible and available, which also means technology helping in reducing the cost of service, so that overall it becomes a lot more democratized. So those are two parlance. The other part of it is like, through technology, can you leverage alternate means? Because the traditional infrastructure, I'll give you an example, let's say around lending. The traditional infrastructure in terms of lending, in terms of, let's say, bureau score, etc., is great, but it has its own limitation in terms of pushing the horizon. So that's where alternate data, alternate modeling, and ability to leverage frontier technologies like your machine learning, artificial intelligence, and even the India stack, which we all are quite proud of, right? How we can leverage everything put together, the India stack and the frontier technologies, which is your own IP as a fintech company, to make sure that you're also able to, for example, in lending space, underwrite the underserved people who might not have that level of background to begin with, so that a traditional lender is in a position to underwrite them. So that's one example. We have seen the benefit of payments in India, right? Both from the player standpoint and the ecosystem standpoint. Today, we all take pride the way, let's say, UPI has come across, not just for the country. Now we are actually exporting the expertise to the world, right? We are also now getting into the cross-border space. So now if you see from that aspect also, technology, again, playing a very, very critical role in terms of pushing the horizon. I guess I've shared this before as well. So the way I look at it is payments is almost like the salt in the food, right? If you don't have the salt, like you can't serve the food on the platter, but then you can't serve the salt only, right? So if you see So it's so important. Payments, lending. Payments is more like creating the infrastructure and highway for the making the transaction digitally viable, because at the end of the day, it's an exchange of money. When it comes to lending, we are actually addressing the challenge of the credit divide in the country, right? Now, what it means for us going forward, it also means like there are other deficit areas in terms of the larger people, the next billion being underserved. It's in the area of, let's say, health insurance. It's in the area of access to any brokerage related solutions. It's in the area of access to directly or indirectly having access to the equity markets. It's in the area of wealth tech. So there is a lot to do. Our DNA as a company and our strength as a company is being a segment player. We are not like a spectrum player. We are a segment player. We know the customers. It's a deep insight what we have from the customers. We are 100% D2C player in the financial services space. So therefore, we are still scratching the surface, if I may say. It's been a fascinating journey in lending. It's been a fascinating journey in payments. But the next frontier for us also to conquer and serve is how we can grow and go deeper. And at the same time, how we can also address some of the other needs of the customers in the financial services space. So in a way, you can call out like how we can pan out as a full financial services fintech player who is actually addressing the credit divide needs, who is actually addressing and helping customers get access to the equity markets, helping customers to get access to solutions around the insurance and otherwise. So it's more like a positioning and servicing our customers for their entire financial need. That's the way we look at it.
Yeah, it's certainly true that technology is really transforming the way fintech operates in India, and it is pushing that democratization horizon further towards the rural India, where the need is more. And Balancehero is really making this looks real in terms of giving financial exclusion true meanings. And it has certainly won an awards in Elets BFSI Game Changer Summits under the category of Champions of Financial Inclusion Initiative. So would you like to say more on this, about your experience at the summits and as on the award part as well, sir?
Firstly, thank you to Elets for recognizing our efforts. It means it means a lot in terms of the encouragement what we get, right? It's a reflection of what we as a company, what we as a team are able to achieve. But again, the way I was putting across at the event as well, it's miles to go. Financial inclusion for this country, and if you see at one point in time, even beyond this country, there's like miles to go, lots to do, and somewhere the journey has started. When you reach the destination, obviously there are accolades, but it's so important that when you are in the journey and you get the recognition, because it serves as a booster, it serves as a strong testimony, and it serves as a sincere encouragement. And there's a reason we have been extremely appreciative of the recognition which we got from Elets, because we're still in the journey. There's miles to go, and here it comes, a sincere pat in the back. All of us are like super stoked and charged up, therefore. So thank you for that. And just to give you a little more flavor of what we are doing and how we are. So our business is 100% digital. That means we don't have any physical model. There's no phygital model around it. To give you some stats, right? We serve 97% of the pin codes in India. So let's say India has 19,000 odd pin codes. It's a large, vast country. And we serve 97% of the pin codes. We do material business for more than 80% of the pin codes. So that it's, and everything digital, right? And if you see some of the pin codes and areas are places where there is very, very low density in terms of banking physical presence.
Yeah.
But the mobile phone has been there.
It's true.
And that's why if you look at it, we take pride in the fact that we have covered as a country the digital divide to a large extent, and it's still going on well. The idea is like once we are able to cover the digital divide, to what extent we are able to leverage it. So when I say about the PIN codes, when I say about the serviceability, that's somewhere which again we take pride. The journey is still on, and just imagine the fact that this entire process, be it on the payment side or in the lending side, starting from the disbursement to collections, everything is electronic. There is no cash handovers. There is no physical presence, and still we are able to kind of cater to it. So that's one aspect. Now, beyond the PIN codes, right? In general, this space and the industry possibly is still operating where a substantial part of the business comes from tier 1 plus, because tier 1 cities and locations also has the appetite. And so if you see, right, in terms of the spread of the business, right, one way to look at it is like the PIN codes which are covered. The other aspect is still for many of the businesses in the financial services space, the main catering is happening at the tier 1. Because tier 1 is you can service a lot more easily. You can still have a physical presence. The entire serviceability becomes a little easier, and you can also see off some level of high margin returns. But if your mandate and passion and purpose is for financial inclusion and pushing the horizon for finance for all, that's when your commitment comes, right? That's when your ability to take the courage and push yourself to see like, okay, what it means in terms of the spread of the business. And that's again a true balance. 80% of our business actually comes from tier 2 plus. So that's again something is somewhere as an endorsement of like, are we really committed for pushing the horizon of financial inclusion, where possibly the need and the appetite for tier 2 plus is very, very high, where possibly the headroom what we have to cover and cater to the underserved market is very high. Also, to give you a perspective, I think in the last 1 odd years, we would have gotten more than 2 lakh customers in the formal organized lending space. Because we are a regulated entity, we come under the regulations of RBI, so there is a formalization. So if when someone is a borrower, then he or she is also getting the opportunity to create their credit history, is also getting the cover and protection of a formalized regulated business with full disclosure, transparency, and ability to kind of get appreciated for good credit behavior. Now, that doesn't happen if the person is dependent on the unorganized sector, yes. Right? So when we look at this last 1 odd years, and when you say like, hey, more than 2 lakh new to credit customers who could formally get inducted, that's something also gives us the motivation and a bit of a pride to kind of really, really go along in the journey. So that's the way I'll kind of put across our serviceability of the PIN codes, the fact that our business is really amplified in the tier 2 plus space, and also, as I mentioned, like our ability to fundamentally close the credit divide, get people more into the formalized system. So it's a journey, but these are the things and these are the milestones which help us to get confidence around it.
It's truly great to hear that True Balance is fully digital, operates in 97% of PIN codes in India, and it got inducted 2 lakhs people last financial years into formal economy. So it's really a great achievement. So I have heard that you worked in enterprise for 20 long years and then contemplating to start in a startup. So how did that idea come, and was it more related to your passion or there was something inside back then?
Thank you for asking me this question, because this is something is so close to my heart. I'll try to keep it simple. There is no very. I don't think there was any sophisticated thought around it, and everything was like planned. If that was the case, possibly after 20 odd years, I wouldn't have shifted. It's like at times you just go with the flow, and you know when it is the right time. right? It is a function. The reason I said like I'll keep it simple is like it's also a function of a lot of things. It's a function of the ecosystem. It's the function of you as an individual, how the journey evolves, your thought process evolves, your understanding of maybe where you are getting the kick from, your understanding of like, are you ready for a different level of risk, a different level of return? What is that exactly ties back to the passion? It's different for different individuals. For some folks, it's like very, very clear sorted, maybe at the early stage itself. For someone like me, the way it has been, like I've been always conscious of the fact that am I able to bring the level of energy and passion into my profession? That's been a constant factor. So when I started my career also in the enterprise, be it as an engineer, be it as a product guy, be it as in the business side, always this was a constant check for me. Am I able to bring the passion into the work? See, at the end of the day, I mean, maybe 80% of our wake time on a given day goes into the work which we are doing. So it's not just for the month end SMS, right? You want to kind of really feel excited about what you're working, and therefore it was so important for me to always have that kind of a cross check that are you feeling passionate about what you're doing? And trust me, you can draw passion both in the enterprise world and in the startup world. So the first 20 odd years of my journey, that way I was fortunate enough. At times I also became I took some conscious call and step as well to make sure that zeal is always there, to make sure that when I go to work, be it a Monday or Friday, I know like I'm able to kind of bring my passion into what I'm trying to do, because that was fundamental to me as an individual. Now, again, evolution of the ecosystem and me as an individual, that aspect also had trickled down that, one is like you put in your effort, you feel passionate about it, but you also get excited about an amplified impact, right? What you're doing in day out basis, are you able to see a great amount of impact for the effort which you're putting in? And the realization therefore was dawning, I think, progressively for me. It was not like one eureka moment. Progressively for me that possibly more in the startup space, you can bring quite a few things on the table and you can see the impact coming by, especially from the time I had been back to the country, because India is so much so in terms of the opportunity and excitement, right? So that's where somewhere at the back of mind the transition had already started happening. Again, was fortunate enough to have interfaces with startups working in India and in other geographies, have had the opportunity to also be on the investment side of the startups, and that's where you get to see like, this is so much so real. If you really commit for it, it is so much so real. And then somewhere in the back of mind, you want to kind of see like, are you at some stage choosing comfort or courage? And I think the key point was that aspect of choosing courage. But choosing courage is also not like just a blind risk, especially quite personally, I'll say, right? When you have crossed 22 years of your enterprise career and you want to kind of get into this area of where you bring in your passion, and totally want to see the impact which you're bringing in. It's not a decision at isolation, right? The fact of life is you're not just living life just for the work. You're living life in totality. You have responsibilities in life as well. So it's not a decision at isolation. So therefore you need to kind of also bring in a little more of pragmatism as well. To see like, are you able to also kind of manage and balance some of the responsibilities? Because once you start your own venture, or once you get into a zone which is like, a lot of excitement, but the enterprise risk obviously is very different. It's not like a stable thing. Every day is an excitement, but the risk which you're signing up for. So at an individual level, it's very, very important that you bring in that pragmatism. You take care of some of the aspects of your individual and personal responsibilities, so that when you jump in and when you're into the waters, you are a lot more at peace. That's something I believe has been also a critical factor, because you need to make sure that you are not dealing with multiple variables in life. You need a very supportive ecosystem, that's for sure. But there's so much so you will get consumed in a startup world that you got to kind of make sure some of the other variables you have taken care of. As a founder or as a leader in the startup space, it's very, very important that you're not just considering a runway for your company and venture, but you also have to make sure that there is enough runway and enough comfort on the other side of the responsibilities. I have seen in many cases when people do this transition and jump over, it becomes very difficult and stressful as well, to be very frank. So that's something which I think I kind of went in my favor. I had my own learnings also, but the reason I share is because I'm sure there are quite a few people who are maybe at the juncture of taking the call, wants to take the call. My humble request and sharing would be just to make sure that though there is an excitement of the impact and etc., but a level of pragmatism also has to set in so that you're able to minimize the variability which you need to address on a given day. So you're at peace in many of the other important quarters of life, and you can really commit yourself towards the venture or towards the startup which you're working for. As a return, it's fascinating. There's only one hashtag when you take the call. It's like one life. So if it's one life, if you really want to live it, just live it. And maybe that's the part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for letting us peep into your professional journey, the transition that you have had. And as you say, there is only one life. So you got to really follow your passion, and with pragmatic steps and calculated tricks, one can really change the game. So thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your wonderful insights. And I hope whatever you have said, your professional journey, what True Balance is doing in terms of changing the financial landscape, and the overall role of technology in pushing the financial services. So that's truly wonderful, and I hope our viewer will learn from it.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thanks.